Good afternoon, Pod Squad. It's your girl, Synovia. Today's message is going to be called Marriage is Not 50-50. Ooh, this is going to be a touchy topic, a real topic, a raw topic. But I want to speak on marriages again today and how marriages are not 50-50. And what do I mean when I say that? Many times, whether it be in church or marriage counseling or the things we see that we may read or things on social media, give us the mindset that a marriage should always be 50-50. You bring 50%, your husband brings 50%, whether that be the finances, whether that be effort, whether that be just managing a home or taking care of the home or taking care of the children or providing for the home, that it should be 50-50. And that's not always true. And I say that because when we come into a marriage and expect it to always be 50-50, what are you going to do in the seasons when your spouse is not giving their 50% or you're unable to give your 50%? And me approaching 20 years of marriage this coming November, being honest, there will be seasons. There's no way you're going to be married for so many years and not get to a point in your marriage or to a point in a season where both of you cannot give or deliver 50%. And that's okay. And you have to be okay with that. So the reason I really want to touch on a marriage or not having an expectation of a marriage being 50-50 is because, believe it or not, there will be some seasons where I'll start with maybe the wives. There will be some seasons when the women are more spiritually stronger than the husbands at that time. And if you're looking for your husband to come in with his 50% and he's spiritually weak, or he's going through a season where he's changing or transitioning, or, God is working on him, or God is working in him, or God is, calling him forth, or, letting him know what his purpose is, there will be times that he cannot bring 50% to the table. And you have to be okay with that. Because if you have the mindset that, oh, okay, I don't know what happened, but my spouse does not meet me halfway, they're not giving their 50%, so our marriage is over, you're going to be very upset, later on into your marriage, especially after the honeymoon stage, that there will be seasons that both of you 9 times out of 10 will not be given your all in the same season. You may try to, and that's okay. If you are, great, kudos to you. But be okay with the seasons where your spouse can't give their 50%. It may be a time, again, like I said, that God may be working on your husband, in your husband. Maybe your husband is under spiritual attack. You have no idea. But you have to be okay with picking up their cross for them as well. Yes, the Bible tells us, Jesus said to pick up our cross and follow him. But when you're married, you become one. So that means you deal with things as one. You go through things as one. You suffer together as one. You have happiness together as one. You share bad times as one. You share good times as one. You have to have that mindset that we are as one. We are as one flesh. God intended for us to be unified, not the same. You're still supposed to have your own personality. Your spouse should still have their own personality. You still have your own purposes that God is looking for you to fulfill, and same with your spouse as well. But you are two bodies, two bodies coming together as one flesh. And I just think more marriages would survive or get through the tougher times if they had the understanding and, being able to see things through God's lens and God's perspective, that you may be in a season where, even if it's not you, maybe your spouse is able to give more than you are. And when I say this, take finances and money off the table. That's not what I'm referring to. But maybe they're able to give more spiritually. Maybe they're able to give more mentally. Maybe they're able to give more emotionally. And maybe something that you're going through, you can't provide that. What if your spouse is going through their own battle? Or what if you're going through your own battle, an eternal battle? Your flesh is at war with your spirit. Your emotions are all over the place. You don't want your spouse to bail on you during this time, right? And your spouse wouldn't want you to bail on him or her during this time if they're going through that. And I think if we just have the mindset coming in, or just expecting that we may come into a season where my spouse can't give 50% or I can't give 50%. There will be times that your spouse is so spiritually drained and spiritually weak and emotionally weak and just going through the the life's lessons. And if you're looking for your spouse to always produce during those times, it's going to hurt your marriage because you're going to feel like they come up short, but you can't blame them during it because life hits all of us and affects all of us differently. Maybe life hit you and it didn't affect you the way it affected your spouse when life hit him. But that doesn't mean you bail on him, or if it's vice versa, that doesn't mean he's supposed to bail on you if you're going through life's ups and downs. That's a part of life. That's a part of marriage. That's a part of our vows, for better or worse, thick and thin, richer or poor, and we think it's always going to be the good. We think it's always going to be thick. It's always going to be better. It's always going to be richer. It's always going to be health. But let's not forget the vows. That's why they had the opposite of it as well. Don't come into the marriage thinking it's always going to be 50-50. And I'm not saying for you guys to walk away from this thinking that, oh, if I don't bring 50%, my marriage will still survive. It's okay. I'm saying that those times where you can't help when life happens. We all face those times where life just comes and feels like a rug is being snatched from underneath us. Like, whoa, what happened? Everything was just fine. And just like that, everything changed. That's life. And those things are inevitable. Those are storms that you cannot avoid. Some battles you can't avoid. You have to go through those storms. You have to endure those battles. And be okay with picking up your spouse's cross to carry it for them. I'm telling you now, my husband and I have been together 25 years. And like I said, we're approaching our 20-year wedding anniversary. It's going to happen. There will be times that your spouse will be picking up your cross for you because you can't. And you have to be okay with those times that you're picking up the cross for your spouse and carrying it for them. And the thing is, you have to be okay with not knowing how long that season is going to last for them. It's hard. Trust me, I know. I'm speaking from experience. When God is working on you or was working on you or still working within you, if your spouse was patient with your construction, your heart transplant that God gave you, you have to be okay with God doing his work on the inside of your spouse as well. And maybe yours took longer. Maybe his will be shorter. Maybe yours was shorter and his will be longer. Who knows? But you have to be okay with that wait, being in a waiting room, that you're just carrying their cross for them, that you're waiting while they're going through life. You're supposed to be there for them. It may be a season. It may be weeks. It may be even months that your spouse is giving maybe 30%. And you have to give 70%. Maybe your spouse is giving 10% and you have to give 90%. I think if we come into a marriage knowing, at least keeping that in the back of your mind that, if I want this marriage to be fruitful, if I want it to be lasting, if I want it to be whole, if I want it to be unified, if I want it to be purposeful the way God intended for it to be, I have to be okay that there are going to be some seasons that just come out of the blue, that seems like they came from out of nowhere. I have to be okay with some seasons where my spouse is not giving their 50%, or I'm unable to give my 50%. And like I said, I don't want you guys to think that I'm just speaking about money, or just when someone wants to slack, they just stop doing their part. No, please don't take my words out of context. But understand, I don't even want to say a happy marriage, a thriving marriage, a marriage that has purpose. There will be seasons where your spouse can't deliver the way they used to. And you have to be okay with waiting on them. You have to be okay with picking up the slack for them, just like you will want them to do for you as well. I think more marriages would survive, and the divorce rates wouldn't be so high if more spouses understood, oh, my spouse is going through, in this season. Like I said, this season may last weeks. This season may last months. Who knows? But yes, Jesus tells us to pick up our cross and follow him. But even in marriage, there will be times you have to pick up their cross as well. There will be times that you're not only carrying your own cross, you're going to carry your spouse's cross too. Trust me, it's a heavy load. Trust me, it's stressful. Trust me, it's hard. Trust me, sometimes it seems uncertain and you're like, am I cut out for this? How much longer do I have to endure this? I'm carrying my own cross, but I'm carrying yours too. It's hard. It's very hard. And I'm speaking from experience. But I also have to understand that if I can do that for my spouse, times I've gone through or times I'm going to go through, my spouse will be there to do the same in return. That's what God intended. That's what looks like a kingdom marriage. That's what marriage looks like in Jesus' eyes. That again, we're doing things his way for a purpose. Yes, God wants us to be happy with our spouse and just have joy and fulfillment and excitement. But God also looks at marriage as purpose. What are the plans and the purpose that he has for your union? And when you can take self out of it, stop being selfish in your marriage. Too often we want what we want and we want it when we want it. That's unfair. What about what your spouse wants? When's the last time you catered to your spouse's needs? Because God wants us to put our needs aside and go after what it is that our spouse needs. That's what the Bible talks about. That's what God wants for us. Not saying that to leave our needs not tended to. He wants us to have our heart's desires, but he also wants us to love our neighbor as we love ourselves, put our own selfish gains aside, and care for your spouse. Love your spouse, honor your spouse, pray for your spouse, be there for your spouse, extend grace to your spouse, submit to your spouse. There will be times you have to extend grace when it doesn't even seem like your spouse is worthy of receiving grace. But you have to be the bigger person. And that goes both ways. I'm not just speaking to the ladies or just the men. Everything that I'm saying goes both ways. Fellas, if you're listening to this, there are times you're going to have to pick up your wife's cross. There are times you should be putting your needs aside and seeing what it is that your wife needs. What does she desire? What does she need from you? And I'm not talking about monetary things. What does her spirit need? What does her soul need? What does her mind need? What can you do to help her get there, to help her fulfill that? Ladies, same with you. There will be times your spouse is so spiritually broken. And men, let's keep it real, ladies. The men don't like to ask for help. But if we take that to God and realize that this isn't a battle between us, this isn't a battle of flesh and war. It's a spiritual warfare. And the enemy wants nothing more than for our houses to be divided, our homes to be divided, our families to be divided. Don't give him that satisfaction. And don't come into the marriage thinking it's always going to be 50-50. There will be times that both of you are giving your all and it's going to be great. But just know there also will be times that your spouse can't deliver on a level you would want them to deliver, or even a level that you're worthy of being delivered to. And be okay with that. Be okay to know that God doesn't want us to get weary of doing what's good. He's keeping count. Don't you keep count of who helped who last time, how many times you helped them, how long you helped them, how you were there for them years ago. No, don't keep count. God keeps count of that. He keeps tabs. He judges, and he's a just God. When we allow God to take account of everything and be in charge of everything, and we, again, lay down our will and submit to his and know that it's for a purpose, God will give you the grace that you need to get through when your spouse is going through. Maybe your spouse is going through and you don't even realize because they don't know how to come to you with it. They don't know how to express their feelings or have the right words to say. But God will give you the grace to get through. God will give you the grace to be the wife he intended for you to be. God will give you the grace to be the husband that he intended for you to be. Because believe it or not, wives and husbands, we have roles to fulfill. There are things as a wife and things as a husband that God requires of us both. So ladies, don't be so quick to say your man isn't doing his part. Are you doing your part as well? That's where God expects us to fulfill our roles. It's in the Bible. It also speaks about how if a man, I don't know the exact words for it, speaks about if he not necessarily mistreats his wife, but if he's not honoring her on a level that she's supposed to be on, God hinders the husband's prayers. He hinders the prayers if we're not treated like heirs to his throne, if his daughters are not treated like the rubies that we are. So ladies, we put all of this on our husbands, but they have their responsibilities as well. Just like we have our responsibilities. Yes, we're supposed to submit, but the men are supposed to submit to us too. If we did more of reading what's in our Bible when it comes to marriages, the way God intended for the marriage to be, we would not be so looking for self-gain for everything, all about me, what I need, what I want, what I need from you. Well, flip it. What can I do for you? What does your spouse need from you? What does your spouse need you to do? What does your spouse need you to do more of? And the spouses, you guys need to think the same, the opposite. Ladies, if you're looking to see what it is that you could be doing more of to fulfill your spouse's needs, husbands, you need to be asking God as well, what can I do to fulfill her needs? Because the way God looks at it is not about getting our own needs fulfilled, it's can you fulfill the other one's needs? Can you care for them? Can you honor them? Can you pray for them? Can you give them grace? Can you carry their cross? Take out that 50-50, because if you come in a marriage looking for 50-50, you're going to get burned. You're going to be upset. You're going to be disappointed. You're going to be frustrated, because you will come into a season where one of you, if not both of you, cannot give 50%, cannot do your part. Whether that be financially, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, that's life. Those are things we cannot avoid. But if we know, oh, my spouse is just going through this season, my husband is going through this season, my wife is going through this season, what can I do to make this easier for him or her? How can I pray for them? How can I stand in the gap for them? How can I intercede for them? How can I encourage them? How can I uplift them? When you take you out of the equation and focus on them the way God intended for husband and wife to do, everything will change. You won't even give the enemy the time of day to where he could come in and manipulate it to divide your house, to split your house, to split your home. That's how we're unified. So I just want you guys to be encouraged and just understand, somewhere in your marriage, somewhere in that relationship, it's not always going to be 50-50. And those of you who are listening who are single, before you say I do, consider these things. Make sure you're ready for these things. This could be 5 years into your marriage. This could be 10 years. This could be 30 or 40 years into your marriage before you hit those seasons. But be okay and understand there will be times you are not only carrying your own cross, but you will be required to carry your spouse's cross as well. You will be required to help them out for the spiritual attacks that they're going through. Because again, we got to stop fighting each other. It's not husbands fighting wives and wives fighting husbands. It's spiritual battles. We're not fighting against flesh and blood. But when we know how to attack what's threatening our marriages and what's threatening our families and what's threatening our homes, we have the upper hand. When you know who you are and who you belong to, when you're on fire for Jesus, he already has victory. God wants your marriages to survive. He wants these marriages to reflect the kingdom. He wants your marriage to reflect him. God doesn't want your marriage. It says in the Bible, God hates divorce. See what your spouse needs. Ask God. If your spouse isn't going to ask God. God wants to let you know on the plans that he has for your marriage. Ask God the vision, to show you the vision that he has for your marriage, the plans he has for your marriage. And when he begins to reveal that to you, God, give me the strategies I need. Give me the grace I need. Give me the tools that I need. Give me the resources that I need so I can manifest, the very thing that you've called for me to do. That's how you're going to have a kingdom marriage, by keeping God first in all things. It's not 50-50, because you got to understand there will be times that you have to balance each other out. And the only way you can balance each other out is when you allow God to come in and be over all. You all be blessed. Y'all have an amazing day. I enjoyed you. Thanks for listening. Please don't forget to share this. I'll talk to you next time. Bye.